Well, it's crazy. I just had a debate. Suris was mentioning this in the chat with Mary Chu, smaller trans creator.
This fucking
and
yeah.
She made videos about me.
Okay.
She was one of the people who made videos about me too, and I like. She comments on my shit.
She comments on my shit.
Yeah.
She is one of those people that I simply will never engage with because I believe that there are certain people who are a net negative when you engage with them. She is one of them.
Yeah.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I think that engaging with people in general is a good thing to do.
I believe platforming a smaller creator means that I have a responsibility to use my platform in a way that does not signal boost a person who will create a world that will harm my fucking girlfriend. That's where I'm from.
No, I see where you're coming from. I think
I just know that like I got misgendered and invalidated, and because like I'm not a real woman because I refer to my boobs as booba, as like a joke in one of the clips, and like no real woman ever said that apparently, and it's like as a VTuber I constantly hear my cis girlfriends talk about that, so it's I don't know, it's so weird.
I think we're kind of past the point of we can't platform this person or we can't platform that person. The Mary Chu, as I see it, is never going to be like on the level of Blair White. Like it's possible, but Blair White already exists. And all of her ideas are the exact same as the Mary Chu's.
So may I give you a counterexample?
Sure.
Nyara.
What you mean?
My counterexample for I think we're past the point of the platforming creating the larger creator that can create problem. My counterexample for that is sitting with us in this chat right now.
I had somebody.
I'm the problem.
Well, first of all, I thought my discussion with the Mary Chu, right, or a debate or whatever you want to call it, was productive because we got to the bottom of what. Because again, I don't think that the Mary Chu just like shits on trans people for the hell of it. I think that she has some deep-seated insecurities. Internalized transphobia. Like this is like she is a deeply hurt person in my opinion. And so I got to the bottom of like, okay, she just wants cis women to be able to feel safe, I guess. Right? Like that's what she really believes she's doing. And so once you get down to that and I start asking questions, like I asked her a question, okay, what if you have a sex offender who is a cis woman who does sexual things to other cis women against their will? Should that person be allowed in the women's restroom? And she couldn't answer. She was like, well, we're not talking about that. And I'm like, no, we are talking about that because the whole point here is that you want to protect cis women. Right, create a safer space. And I actually had one person come to my DMs and say, hey, listen, like I'm a fan of Mary Chu, but you were making some good points. You know, like I the first time I saw you guys interact, I didn't like you. But now you've really made me sit down and reconsider a lot of this stuff.
Okay. My argument is not that you cannot find anything productive in so. That is not my argument. My argument is that there is always going to be a world where by platforming a person who has very, very caustic views, you amplify that person's platform. And through amplifying their platform, you help grow their base. Now, granted, in this situation, you made headway. And again, my reason for not covering Mary is entirely personal. So there is that as well. My simple argument is that to say that we are past the point of responsible platforming is to ignore the actual evidence of platforming changing the opinion on people in general. Because JD Vance going on Turning Point USA directly changes the way that people view him in conservative spaces, because he was also a joke in conservative spaces, and then suddenly he was TP USA's big boy. I think there's nuance there, obviously. There's not the do not bring person on show because you can end up causing that person to get more famous. Like, obviously there's nuance. But
yeah,
I think that trying to say that we are past the world of responsible platforming, I think that's I don't think that's true.
Like for me personally, it's just like I address a lot of like why a lot of trans people with internalized transphobia have issues with me, I kind of like, I address the points in general and like the issues, but I don't see anything gained from like reacting to a video of like somebody just like having like a lot of these like issues that I already like talk about anyway.
So
it's just like for me personally, I don't think I gain anything from it.
I'll posit a comment that I got from somebody in Platinum Politics when I was arguing in favor of money abolition. Feel however you want about that. But the point is, I was arguing for something this person disagreed with, and their reply was like, this person and another person were talking about me, and I saw this, and so I was just like kind of peeking in, like, "Ooh, what are they saying?"
Yeah.
And this person was like, "Well, I don't agree with Alec Gunter, but I will say he's growing on me as a person." And so, in my opinion, right, that is the important part. Okay. I am trying to make and I know this sounds conceited, just bear with me. I am trying to make myself as likable of a person as possible to as many people as possible. Okay. I feel
like in a world that's like so divided, I think that like having some common ground, like it's difficult to find, but if you're managing to like build this,
you don't need common ground. That's the magic part. You don't need it. What you need is, like I said earlier, confidence and to be a little bit of a goofball. Like, all you need to do is not take yourself too seriously and just be really confident in the things you say, and people will just like gravitate toward you. Like, and once they start to gravitate toward you, even if they disagree with you, they'll start to be they'll listen to you more. They'll be influenced by you more. And so even if you take somebody with like a tiny audience, like, you know, I'm not sure what, we'll just say Mary chooses like similar to mine. I don't know. But like, I don't see it as me like boosting her because like the people who watch me are now going to know about her. I see it as her boosting me because now anybody who's in her audience, like the person who DM'd me, they're going to be introduced to me. And as long as I think I'm a pretty likable person. So as long as I present myself that way, and an entertaining person as well, you know, it's the Joe Rogan strategy. It's a Joe Rogan strategy. Like, he's an entertaining, likable, confident, dumb person, and people like entertaining, confident, dumb people. And they'll listen to them and just kind of absorb what they say like a sponge, just because they have an attractive personality.
So
the thing is, like, for me,
you're gonna be the Joe Rogan of the.
There you go. I even got the dome.
I have to say
I even got the dome. I will be the Joe Rogan of the left, but with a beard.
I think like I'm in a weird position. Like, I had conversations, debates with people who are, you know, to be fair, much bigger than I am, who are like conservative and whatnot. It's just like, it's so exhausting for me to like have to constantly debate my existence and like my validity as like a person. And I find it more enjoyable to like boost the voices of other like trans people, like LGBTQ people, and talk about this and maybe like react to a video of somebody and like dissect it instead of like actually having a long-winded conversation that always goes in circles because we can't find, like, it's so difficult for people to like accept the basis of everything that like my identity and whatnot like rests upon.
Of course. And I would never put that on a person of a minority group. You know, like, I would never say, well, Nyara, it's your responsibility to fix the transphobes. No, it's not like that.
Yeah.
It's we've talked about this before. You know, you can just be a safe space for trans people. There's nothing wrong with that.
They can't breed. So like, I feel like there's some positives to be had here.
Well, that's true in two ways, right? I mean, you're like, it's true. Like, you fix a bigot and they won't breed more bigots. Anyway, you slice it.
Yeah.
What is also like a big struggle for me when it comes to talking to content creators is the fact that they have like a financial incentive to keep doing what they're doing. And they want to like keep this ignorance in order to capitalize it off more.
Well, it's mental gymnastics they're doing. What were you going to say?
You could always see like what ultimately happened with Hunter Abalone. So like, who here is familiar with his journey, where he was very much a right winger. He argued, you know, against feminism, against against abortion, everything, and then he had his watershed moment where he started becoming a better person. He started arguing in favor of trans rights. He started arguing in favor of just general improvements for society that are far more leftwards, and his audience abandoned him. A handful of people stayed around, but if you look at his actual channel, his channel went through a hemorrhaging of people, a slow growth, and then another hemorrhaging over time. And now he makes content on a different platform that's like a group podcast thing, if memory serves. But like in terms of content that he makes himself, he does not do the same thing he used to, because that channel, that base he built for himself, died when his opinions were no longer reinforcing the base he created. And that's a scary thing for a lot of people to come to terms with, is that they could be that person. They could be that person that changes their mind and their entire audience goes away, and now suddenly they can't support a family.
Yeah.
Well, I lost a healthy portion of my audience. You know, like not a huge amount. I'm still at like 31K. And I was at like 31.2K before. So I lost like 200 people. But like when I came out and I said, listen, guys, we need to start practicing empathy toward everybody. And I mean everybody. You know, like, and when I say that, what I mean is understand where they're coming from, because they don't think they're the evil guy twiddling their fingers and twirling the mustache. Okay. They don't see themselves that way. They see themselves as the hero. Okay. So we need to start analyzing their headspace like in that fashion in order to be able to more effectively combat them. And a lot of people took this as me saying, oh, you're just saying we have to be nice to bigots and racists and transphobes. Alec Gunter's going soft, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't care. There's the door, you know?
It's not about being soft. It's about being effective.
Yes. And I mean, I think Hunter Avalon is a rare example of somebody who was able to overcome that in a pretty massive way. But I agree that like the money spigot needs to be turned off for a lot of these idiots. Like somebody like Matt Walsh, you're never going to change him as long as he has the money spigot on.
Well, especially because like the money spigot for him is to the tune of tens of millions of dollars, because we saw with the Steven Crowder situation what a Daily Wire yearly contract looks like, and it looks like $50 million. And that was considered for Steven Crowder. He thought that was a low ball compared to what Candace and Walsh were getting.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he's not just in it for the money. In his mind, he's doing the right thing. But you're never going to untangle that as long as that money spigot's on, because that's got his, I call it like a brain knot. That brain knot is tight because of that money. It's like a glue that holds it together.
Yeah, I think that like morals and ethics, like, they don't play a role when you just involve this amount of like money.
That's one of the reasons why it's one of the reasons why when somebody goes like, if I were a billionaire, I would do this helpful thing. Like, no, you wouldn't, because you wouldn't be a billionaire if you had those empathy centers, those mirror neurons doing what they're supposed to do. You would naturally not be able to become one.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like you just wouldn't take advantage of people to the point that you could become a billionaire. Like
exactly.
It's a self-defeating scenario. Like if you set out to become a billionaire, the path that you take will dictate that once you are a billionaire, like it's making a deal with the devil. You know, once you're a billionaire, you're not going to want to do that shit, because the path it takes to get there is so self-defeating, and you have to like surrender. You have to sell your soul. You have to sell your soul. The bottom line. So like in the process of selling your soul, you will, at the end of it, you will not want to help humanity.
I think it's funny that even in fiction, the only times that you see the multi-billionaire become like the hero of the story, or at least become a good person by comparison in a story, you've got like Tony Stark, life-altering thing happened that fucked him up hard. You've got Bruce Wayne literally inherited most of that wealth. He got fucked up early on. Traumatizing thing happened. Or you get like from Yukio, you get like Seto Kaiba, who objectively did a lot of good in that story because he dismantled a fucking war profiteering company and turned it into a gaming company that made shit that people actually wanted. But even then, it was an inheritance thing. It's always, even in fiction, most of the time, it's like, yeah, no, the Wolf of Wall Street corporate billionaire that worked their way up to the top is not the person doing this. They're not the person making those decisions. It's the person who seized that wealth by some other means a lot of the time who ends up doing good with the wealth.
I do think that like J.K. Rowling thinks that she's actually helping.
Oh yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that she strongly believes that, you know, they're like the hero. I don't think someone like Elon Musk actually believes they're a good person.
I think Elon Musk likes being liked, and so he does things that he thinks will make him liked.
No, more than anybody, Elon Musk thinks he's the hero. More than anybody. Like, he absolutely, like, tell me he's not. Like, you have to think you're the hero to act the way he does. And he's super insecure about it.
He's got main character syndrome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He thinks that he's Deku from My Hero. He literally thinks he's Deku from My Hero.
I think he wants to be Iron Man so badly. That's why he like keeps talking about like how you know, Marvel took like inspiration from like SpaceX and Elon Musk and whatnot, and he was like asked all these questions, and I think there's definitely like something.
But you can only think that about yourself if there is a nugget of good inside of you. And I know that it like, this is a big pill to swallow, but like, there has to be a nugget of good inside of Elon Musk for him to even pretend to act like he's the hero. He's the hero.
I don't know. I can understand that there is a nugget of good inside someone, but my contrast to that would be if I handed you a giant thing of meat that you needed to sustain yourself on for a year, but 0.1% of that meat, somewhere in that meat, was a cyanide tablet that you would not be able to tell when you ate it. Probably not eat the meat.
Of course not. But what if there were a method to remove the tablet?
If there were a method to remove the tablet,
what if I dug through? What if I dug through and removed it?
Right.
Then I'm going to eat it.
If you can dig through and remove it, then you can eat it. Sure, understandable.
There you go.
But my thing is, if just a tiny chance that something can be that caustic, that detrimental to me is enough to prevent me from doing that, the converse being true, where Elon has the tiny nugget of good and then a wealth of evil, like an indescribable wealth of evil on top of that. Good enough reason for me to not.
I genuinely don't believe that Elon Musk could do anything. Same with like J.K. Rowling. They could do anything to like redeem themselves.
Well, it's not about redemption, right? Like, I used to be a conservative. I took a very similar route to what Hunter Avalon did, except I wasn't an influencer when I became a leftist. I started out in my influencing career as a leftist, but I used to be a conservative. And so it's not about redemption so much as it is about like if Elon Musk were to turn tail and be a good guy, whatever, tomorrow, there's no amount of making up for it that he could do. You know what I mean? Like, he can't like redeem himself in that capacity.
I think it's less about redemption and more about harm reduction.
Yeah, well, and not even just harm reduction, but imagine Elon Musk actually being a benefit to society. You know what I mean? Like, this is how rehabilitation works. This is what leftism is all about, is like taking people who are fundamentally good deep down, but they're just flawed enough that they are not, they're hurting more than they're helping, right? And it's not about like this person redeeming themselves or punishing them enough or anything like that. It's just taking this person and turning them into a positive force, even if just a little bit. That's what I think it's about. So like, to go back to the meat example, like, I want to like treat that meat as though it's the only food you are going to get. Mm-hmm. You are going to find a way to remove that cyanide tablet. You will find a way. And that's how I want to treat people like that.
Yeah, I just think that like somebody like there's a level to it.
So this is something I've had to come up with or kind of confront and talk about in the piece I'm doing on Destiny, because a large portion of Destiny's audience and popularity was gained through specifically platforming people like Sargon of Akkad, Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes is arguably one of the biggest ones. And I think there is a direct through line you can draw between somebody like Destiny trying to reach Nick Fuentes in good faith and Nick Fuentes's continued proliferation. in relevancy and popularity, because I think trying to reach somebody in those good faith terms who are inherently, as Nick Fuentes is, a bad faith actor, somebody who is conniving, somebody who will just suit whatever argument to make themselves look better in whatever space they're in. And I think that creates it. It's the part where you get into the mess of whose audience is being exposed to what. But regardless of how somebody walks away feeling about it, they have been able to sit down for an hour with Nick Fuentes under the guise of being a more rational human being. And I think that is that's the danger, is there's the nuance of who do you decide you want to hear out and who do you decide is a bad faith actor who is unreachable. Because like you were saying, like, I'm not going to sit down with Matt Walsh. Like, there's nothing to be gained from sitting down.
But I have, and I actually had quite a bit of gain. Like,
did you sit down with Matt Walsh?
I mean, for you.
Well, I didn't sit down with them, but like I went to a college thing and Vosh reacted to it, and that's how I got a lot of my boost. So
yeah,
and I did a pretty freaking good job. You know, like like I walked out of there and people were like patting me on the back and they're like, "Oh my God, like look at you." And so in my opinion, like, how do I want to put this? We have to show people that we are willing to engage with anybody. Like, I think that anybody is worth engaging with because we're all humans at the end of the day. You know, we're just as prone to becoming bigots as anybody because our brains are like 99% the same. So I don't know. Like, what I'm trying to get across is somebody like Nick Fuentes, great example. He fundamentally, in his heart of hearts, do you really think that he thinks that he's evil?
I don't think he cares. I think
that's the bigger problem when you have somebody like Nick, is that he would just dissociate and he would immediately be like, well, see, that's the problem, is that you're arguing from a liberal basis of what is evil. Like, he would try and obfuscate with that.
He sees himself very much like a Joker character where the idea of morality, good or evil, is beneath him.
Yeah, like he just sees himself as an agent of chaos with nothing deeper to really contribute, while wearing the guise of like.
But why? But why?
Warrior.
There's still a reason.
So you can see. So I have a question. Have you seen the interview that was done between Nick Fuentes and the ex-KKK member? This is an old interview from well before he had. This is while he was still on YouTube. Like, he had not been kicked off YouTube yet. He had not had to go make cozy TV. He was still KKK member. Used to be a grand wizard, not a grand wizard, but like one of the high-ranking wizards in their cult. And KKK guy asks him, like, why are you doing all this? Why are you creating this movement? I did this same thing, but we had hoods instead of calling ourselves groypers. I did the same thing that you're doing, and when I left, I saw all of the evil that I did. I saw everything and saw just how fucked up it was. And the entire time, all Nick goes is, I'm not doing any. What are you talking about? I'm just a guy online. I'm just a campus conservative who's just got an audience of people I'm talking to. That's all I'm doing. Like, every single word out of his mouth shows none of I'm trying to do something for good or I'm trying to do something for bad. It is all deflection for the purpose of saying, like, I'm not even a regular guy. I'm just me, and I do these things.
Okay. It is.
I feel like a lot of like conservative streamers and whatnot use that as an excuse to invalidate or like to just dismiss criticism and like, I don't do any harm. Like, I'm not in politics. I'm not inciting violence. I just
exactly
like this is what I want, right?
But that's the point. They don't.
And I think we get that they like. Those concerns are based in a material interest that if we talked about it, if we really sat down, like if you take any random Nazi or groyper and you have them sit down with a leftist and you ask, hey, what do you like, just baseline, what do you want out of the world? The things that they're going to come up with as far as I want to be able to, provide for my family. I want to be able to buy a house one day. I want to be able to get married, have kids and a dog, or however that diverges, but it's going to fall within the relative same area of I want to live a productive life, generally speaking, that is also beneficial for both myself and people around me. I want my work and my labor to be able to be enjoyed and utilized so that I am not just poor and that I can go through life and like I these are the things I want. And I think that's what you're getting at. And I think the problem is that a lot of us recognize that there are a lot of the same material issues underpinning this. Like Suris was saying earlier, it is more on conservatives to come to a point of like recognizing a problem in the world. And so, for example, the United States' steadfast support of Israel has been a obviously very contentious topic. But if you go to a leftist versus a groyper, they're going to have two very different summations. One of them is going to be that like, hey, we should not be funding this genocidal imperial project. And the other is going to be, well, actually, you see the protocols of the elders of Zion. See, let me tell you about the Federal Reserve. And so it's this very different dichotomy of engagement that I think going into it with too much good faith is bound to go back to the cyanide thing. It's bound to come up. There are probably plenty of people who are reasonable enough, even if they disagree with your worldview, even if they have all these horrible things they said, reasonable enough, you'd be able to sit down and have a conversation across from. And yeah, you might even reach a couple of those people, but for every 99, there's going to be the 1% cyanide tablet. There's going to be the Nick Fuentes in there.
I think that like in a lot of instances, in a lot of instances, like we kind of agree on like similar issues, but like the solutions that they come up with is just basically like, white people are being replaced. That is why like the housing crisis even like exists and whatnot. Oh, the refugees are stealing the jobs and stuff like that. And it's just like they come up with solutions that are just rooted in misogyny, misinformation, racism, and whatnot.
One of my concerns is that and I don't think there's a real good way to answer this, but Dead Domain, you touched on this a little bit when bringing up the trajectory of Destiny. One of my concerns is how many failed good faith discussions does it take before you recognize that an actor is a bad actor? What is the tipping point where you decide that this person is not worth it? I think all of us have an arbitrary
at some point
line.
Yeah, it is arbitrary. It's going to vary from person to person. Mm-hmm. It's going to be, it's going to vary based on personal experience, but it's hard without turning it into a absurd science. It's hard to really judge, like, what is the line at which you say, okay, this person is a bad actor versus, any other analysis. Like, okay,
that's a good question.
For Aiden Ross example, Aiden Ross, I think, is a very self-motivated person, but I think he is legitimately too stupid to be a bad actor, because I don't think he, just the way he goes through the world is so frictionless that he is never challenged in that way to even think about the morality of what he's doing
in that sense, because that's how Asmund is.
Yeah, exactly. Like it is this. There's almost this libidinal way that a lot of, when they get to a certain point of not market penetration, but audience capture, and they don't really have to worry about money, and they don't really have to worry about anything anymore, that I think that's when you see a lot of those a lot of the ideology slip in and seep in. But you have to again think back to what is their intent, and then how are you able to gauge that as an outside observer?
I think in general, a lot of cis straight guys do not have enough pushback and are very privileged and don't have to think about a lot of things that they do. For me, for instance, when there's subtle transphobia, where there's something that even allies do that is rooted in transphobia, and you call it out and you give them a little bit of pushback, they get really defensive about certain things because they aren't used to being challenged.
What do you mean you don't like it when I walk up to you unprompted and say you pass really well? I saw you across the street. I don't know you at all, but you pass really well for one of the transes.
I will say though, there's also there's the converse of that though, where by using the exact language you used, even though it's all accurate language, privilege this guy, less friction, all of it's accurate language, they're accurate statements, but every single one of those words is like a sleeper cell trigger word that that turns the most moderate, like the person who thinks they're the most moderate centrist person, into a fucking rabid conservative instantly. And so
same with like patriarchy.
Yeah,
if you bring that up,
there's a couple of, so like as an example, I think I've stopped using the term privileged for years solely because it is a term that, while correct in every meaningful way, it produces no results. It is a word that when I use it, it only produces results with other leftists. And here's my thing. Reaching other leftists is good because reaching other leftists means that you can organize. Reaching other leftists means that you can get people together for good. But from the perspective of trying to turn people into leftists, trying to get people to leave caustic ideologies, that language is, in every meaningful way, worthless.
So I have videos regarding like male privilege and how it doesn't actually does what people think it's going to do, or like what people hope it's going to do, and instead people are getting like defensive, and it invalidates and like dismisses a lot of like struggles that men face because of like the patriarchy and whatnot. And
yeah, because like the quickest thing you can do to get somebody to no longer talk to you about how important trans suicide rates are to address is to say something that invalidates male loneliness suicide rates. Like that is a super fast way.
So I've talked to Nyar a little bit about this. There's this concept.
Why would you do that?
I know, right? Why would I talk to somebody else to do that to kids? It's crazy. But I've talked. Can't
believe I'm being platformed.
Right. There's this concept. I don't know if I'm the first person to come up with this, but during my time of like self-reflection, I've come up with this concept called the mind cave. Because if you think about conversations, it's like a dialogue tree, right? It's just a very complex dialogue tree. And so when you start to talk to somebody, you are asking for permission to enter the caverns of their mind, right? And if they agree to the conversation, which they usually do, they're inviting you in. And then you walk down this cave together, right? And you sort of, to jump to the finish line here, it's you become one mind, right? Like you are simultaneously unlocking pathways in each other's neurons at the same time so that you guys are on the same page, right? You are literally on the same page. That's what it means to have a conversation. So you're right. So when you're having a debate, what ends up happening every single time, is that so when you go down a cavern in the mind cave, okay, all that is a prompt. Okay, that's what the cavern is. It's a prompt. And then you get to the room, and that's the meat of like what's being said when somebody says the things they do. You can sit there and analyze the room and break it down further, and you can like pick where to go next. It's the dialogue tree. So during debates, what happens every time is you get stuck. You don't go any deeper. And you always get stuck because you can't decide on what to call that cavern. You can't decide. The privilege thing's a great example. If you sit here with a conservative and you try to say you have white privilege, that cavern may actually literally be the white privilege you're talking about, but they're going to sit there and tug at your arm and say, we ain't going down that pathway. No. I don't believe that that's even a thing.
I'm not privileged.
There's nothing there for
every dollar I have.
Right. There's nothing there for us. So if you take that sign down and you say, okay, well, maybe not white privilege. How about the advantages that you have as a result of not being a descendant of slavery, or something to that effect? Something that will get them to go down that pathway.
What's a fun one? There's a fun one that takes people down that path pretty quickly. Do you like your parents? Do you feel like you were lucky to have loving parents?
An interesting one.
Do you feel like you were lucky to have loving parents? Because if that person says yes or no, it doesn't matter which way they go. But if they feel like there was an advantage or a disadvantage that they gained by having the parents that they have already ceded the argument that things like privilege can exist. And now all you have to do is lead them down that road without using the trigger word.
But that's the thing. If you're right, and this is my last point, if you're right about the point that you're making, any path that you take is going to lead to the same conclusion, just like you just demonstrated. And so you shouldn't be afraid of going down a path with a different label than privilege, because it will still lead to the same outcome.
There's something that
Also,
I wanted to talk
you're
about, and
muted.
maybe it's
Sorry. To your point, I actually have experience with this in real life, and it was part of I did a documentary on just the mess last January that was the Trump inauguration. And I was in Washington, D.C. I traveled across the country, recorded a whole bunch of my journey and walking around in the freezing cold. And I went to a number of election night parties and interviewed Trump supporters. And there was a fascinating interview that I think the mic was off, so the footage was garbage, and I only had a little bit of it that I could really use. But I had a fascinating conversation with an older lady who we got to talking about how she, didn't like Bernie Sanders because he was a socialist and all of this other stuff. These buzzwords that, we've been talking about. It scares people away. And we got to talking, we talked more and more about okay, well, what public funding, what do you think people should be able, what safeguards, what safety nets do you think there should be? Because a lot of that is what people call socialist. And we got to talking about, because this was based in her personal experience, how the government doesn't do, and I am a firm believer in this. I think Veterans Affairs and stuff for former military members is one of the great undervalued and underrepresented ways to reach people who consider themselves conservatives or libertarian. People so, especially on the left, especially in leftist spaces, are so easily to be oh, fuck, just real baby killer shit. It's still the 60s. And it bugs the hell out of me because there is an entire apparatus that is well understood now in this country where military recruiters will go after places with high amounts of low college admittance, low high school graduation, high amounts of people of color, low income communities, and will essentially predate on these communities, sucker them into military service, and then just leave them with next to nothing. And this was the person I was talking to, knew multiple people who had been in the military who were unable to find jobs due to PTSD, who Veterans Affairs were not helping with. And then they had all of this medical complication type stuff. And it was a really good, like you were saying, when you couch a lot of these ideas in different language, and language that is not, progressive, quote unquote, progressive, and in language that is not, the kind of shit that a lot of people like to point at as being what the left believes. But most people on the left don't think that, somebody being guilty over being white is even a real thing. It is being able to recontextualize. I think it does do two things. One, it disproves a lot of the notions that somebody who is coming with a more radical or right-leaning view might have on you and the points that you're going to make. If you're able to say okay, well, no, I actually do agree with this. This is another thing that has been a bedrock of Destiny's popularity, is he was one of the only people through the kind of awakening that happened 2016 to 2020. He was one of the only people to consistently be no, I think these things are too woke, these things, and it got him a lot of goodwill from more conservative spaces. And the other thing I think is that it allows, when you reframe these issues, it allows people, or a way to converse with people, that they can see through their own lens, the point you're trying to illustrate. So for that lady, exactly, me being able to talk about social safety nets and these things that, a lot of, if you were to just say these things, any conservative who's on stage at the Turning Point USA conference would call that communism and socialism. But here is this a hardcore enough Trump voter that she traveled thousands of miles to be at an inauguration party. And she is saying, yes, I want the government to be able to take care of former military members, help them with medical needs, help people get off drugs and all of this other stuff. And it's because you're able to reframe that in a way that makes sense to their worldview.
Isn't that what Mamdani did really?
No.
Well?
Oh no, that's and when you put, and I think there is a difference between, because this is where you get into this idea of appealing to an audience. When you put somebody, Mamdani did it. Bernie Sanders had the phenomenal, kind of famous interview he did in front of a Fox News town hall. And, this room full of Fox News voters and viewers are by the end of it, like basically doing standing ovations for the stuff he's saying, because a lot of it is common sense and a lot of it is along
Agreeable.
lines that, it appeals to everybody, which is why people have to rely on obfuscating everything. It's why, you know, people have taken to calling shit communist and socialist. It's why Niara, it's why people like Asmongold will constantly skate right past any kind of nuance about a incredibly fraught subject of personal health care that relies on, you know, plenty, if not dozens of experts sometimes for one patient consulting before even like puberty blockers. But instead they have to narrow that down to, oh, you want to mutilate children, which isn't true, but they can make it sound true enough that they don't have to engage with the actual thing being said.
I think the right has like a lot of things that are basically like conversation enders that are just like emotionally charged, and they just end everything. It's like calling trans people talking about like, you know, trans kids and whatnot groomers, and then it's like, oh, grooming is bad, and you know, we shouldn't like engage in good faith with people who want to groom children because like, you know, that's ridiculous.
It's the terminating thing. It was Charlie Kirk did it. A ton of conservatives do it where they delineate it. I talked about this in a stream I did where Asmon responded to me and did not actually watch my video, but did a whole video about how he responded, which he didn't. And I watched the whole video. Anyway, it's the whole thing. I talked to Niara about this. Yeah. It is this delineating, because you'll hear people, and this is what Charlie Kirk did. A lot of them like to say, hey, I will talk to anybody. I love debate. I love having a conversation. Of course, I'll talk to anybody about anything. But then they'll say, unless you're not reachable, which is, you know, it's kind of a mirror to what we've been talking about this whole time, is like, what is that line? The difference there is that we're willing to talk out and be like, okay, how many times do you hear somebody out before you judge they're a bad faked actor? Whereas they will see, okay, this is a trans person. Obviously they're too biased. They can't be trusted with anything, and they can't have a reasonable discussion about this.
If somebody is being bad faith, the last thing they want is for somebody to for the audience to figure that out. So, like let's take for instance, like, trans activists want to mutilate kids, right? Now, on the surface, what are you arguing? You're arguing, like, that person is arguing against the mutilation of children, and I agree with that stance. Frankly, I don't think most mutilate children.
Most people do.
Thank you. Got it. So. But they're accusing me of believing that, and that's a lie. So now I have to prove that that's a lie. Okay. And I can either do that or I can respond in bad faith. Well, your people circumcise children, which is also which that's true. But where does that get us? You know,
what aboutism is not effective, because here the real reason. The problem with what aboutism is that I feel it so often goes like it just ricochets, because you're assuming you're assuming everything about somebody's worldview, but we're in this just constant state of simulacra where everybody's worldview is changing little by little all the time. So you can't say, you know, like, you want to support, you know, mutilating kids, you probably loved Biden and got the jab. And it's like, well, no, because those two things aren't also true, but they're assuming that because of your worldview.
Sorry, I was just laughing that, like, somebody in the chat called me. They said I looked vaguely racist, and I honestly, I think that's a compliment.
To be fair, you do. You look like you use the hard R once in a while.
Okay, whoever said that, those are leaked DMs, and those were not supposed to be out there. Okay, and they're fake. Also.
Something that I incredibly I find so tricky. Like,
also, thank you for the rain,
that I
Hannah.
ran into
and Bomber
with
Fox.
like the Asmongold situation, like big time, is that like he says a loaded statement like, "Oh, Niara is like talking about kids so often, so she wants to groom children and mutilate children and whatnot." You have such a loaded statement, and in order to get to the root of a lot of things, you have to go to like a fundamental level and explain a lot of things. And I have like a 40-minute video going deep dive into everything. And then there are too many people who are like, oh, this is too long. If you need to use so many words to explain your stance, that means you're already like incorrect and you're like a danger to children and whatnot.
Fun fact, Fun fact, they are correct in a sense, because a very common conservative debate tactic that has a incredibly well-known success rate is that if you are explaining, you are already losing. They are not correct about you being a predator at all, but I don't remember if it was Reagan who had said it, but it is a very, very common thing with conservatives is to always be on the attack. At least conservative politicians who are trained in this shit, trained in media, their job is to always be on the attack and to not have to explain things. If you are explaining, you are on the defense. If you are on the defense, you are losing.
I just
I mean,
that,
and
like,
it is and like it's something that also speaks for itself in its effectiveness. Where you look at that is Trump's tactic every time, and it just to be a wrecking ball and leave debris behind you, so that by the time you're already on to whatever you're doing next, people are still picking up the ruin you left behind.
Correct.
Do you guys know
think
what
that, like,
judo is?
Who?
Judo?
Judo?
Judo is the fighting style judo.
Yeah.
It has a heavy focus on using an enemy's weight to throw them to the ground, right? Use their attack against them. And so what I do in debates is when somebody accuses me of being a child mutilator, I'll turn it back around on them. I'll say, okay, explain how I am, because I don't want to be that. Like, you don't think that I want to be that, right? Like, you don't think that I think that. So explain to me how I'm mutilating children, and then we can have a discussion about that. And then they'll be like, okay, well, you're giving them puberty blockers. And I'll be like, okay, well, I'm just going off of the evidence that puberty blockers are this, and that. So like, and so my tactic now is like kind of an intellectual, like, I don't want to say intellectual, it sounds conceited, a rhetorical judo, where it's like you cede as much ground as you can and then let them kind of dig the hole themselves and then just bury them, like
I think that
necessary.
Something that like I struggled with, that like I had to learn in the journey, is that like a lot of right-wing like tactics are basically controlling the narrative through optics and not through substance. And it takes
it is purely the
performance.
I mean, and you can see that again by looking at the Groypers and looking at so much of Donald Trump's like cult of personality, and the stuff that people like about him it's purely aesthetic. It is this chintzy Walmart brands like American idea of what opulence or wealth looks like. But it is the aesthetic that is sold to people of quote unquote success, of what being rich, of the American dream, what all that shit looks like.
Yeah. And a lot of it is just like, when you look at something like Gamergate, for example, or even like the anti-SJW era, like the highs of like Jordan Peterson, like I bought his books, like, I kind of fell for that as well. And like you see the woke SJW liberal like screaming and whatnot, and you don't listen. And it's so easy to look at like somebody who's like Jordan Peterson, and he's like rational and he's like calm and whatnot, and he's like saying all these like big fancy words. But like if you look past it, you realize that even like the screeching SJW was kind of right. And
it is just the optics with which they do it it's the thing that is the most ripe picking for any. It's the whole reason why Charlie Kirk or Steven Crowder ever did their campus thing was the young liberal or the young progressive who they know what they believe, they know why they believe it, but they are not media trained, they are not camera trained, they are not mic trained. So when they get up there, they kind of stumble through talking points that they've tried to remember, the things that like they go in half cocked, and somebody will rip them to shreds, and then that becomes like, immortalized in every and that becomes immortalized in every SJW liberal owned compilation and stuff. Which is why when Alec, when you go up and you're able to like know your shit, ping pong back and forth with Matt a little bit. It changes the entire tenor of it. And it's stuff like that is the reason why they don't like taking, like when you see them go and do these campus events, the reason they are not doing it against a somebody on equal footing is because they want those clips. They want the target rich environment of people who they've pissed off so much that they can come up and they're sputtering angry at them and they get to farm that.
So my advice to those people then, because they're going to keep doing it, like they're going to keep going up to these like bigots and saying, like, I'm talking about the people who go up to the bigots and start like talking on the microphone. What they're doing is fundamentally good. Like they are on the right side and they know they are. And so they just go up like with whatever confidence they can muster and just try to argue that. You're trying too hard. A lot of these people are simply trying too hard. What you got to do is you just got to like, first of all, reframe it in your mind such that, you know what, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I am. Let them prove to me that I'm wrong. Right. And so you go up to the microphone and you say, okay, like what I did with Matt Walsh, like, is, okay, well, why do you believe that a 13-year-old should be forced to give birth to their, if I may, rapist child? Right? Because he does believe that. And so I basically sit here and I'm like, well, tell me that I'm wrong, that a 13-year-old shouldn't be forced to do that. Like, convince me that I'm the one in the wrong, you know? I'm open to it. Like, if you can explain to me why that's an acceptable way to go forward, I'm more than open to hearing why. But at the moment, I just don't think that's a good thing. And then what you're doing is you're framing it in such a way that that's really hard to argue against. And you're forcing, like, what it comes down to is you got to force them onto the defensive. Because like you were saying, the domain, like, they're always on the offensive. They're always on the attack. They're always going after you for being the child killer and you for being the, you know, the one who wants to mutilate kids. Flip it around. Just say, okay, like, you know, like explain yourself. Explain this then. Like, make them the ones. I hope I'm making sense.
It does make sense because, like, okay, so what people are doing when they come to the attack of like the dumb liberal, right? What they're doing is they have a schema. They have an idea in their head, a facsimile in their head of what you are. You're pro-trans people, so you must be for child mutilation. And you make them justify the belief. You say, hey, you have a straw man. I'm asking you to stuff it. I'm asking you to fill it with substance. Please try to fill it with substance. Yeah. And you can force them to be explaining by doing so. This naturally, though, will only ever work in an arena where you either have control or you have equal control of the microphone. And even more importantly, control of the footage after it goes out on the internet.
I think this is actually, like, there's a really good example of how that goes, that even if you are eloquent and good at arguing your points and you come prepared, how, that environment works is the Whatever podcast, which I've unfortunately had to watch a lot of episodes of.
I just released a video about it.
Because it is consistently, if there is a girl that they bring on who's an OnlyFans girl who is well-spoken, who knows what the fuck she's talking about, they will have 4 or 5 people ganging up on her and kicking her out and like just chastising her and then talking shit after she leaves to make sure everybody knows that she was engaging in socially unacceptable behavior. And it's like they turn that frustration into content.
I think there's really always like a social stigma that's being weaponized against like people like on the left and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
You just have to kind of trust at a certain point that people are going to watch that. Like if you're the girl, for instance, who's on the Whatever podcast, you have to maintain composure. You have to not break frame. And so, like, even if they do that after you walk off, you got to be like, well, you know, I made my point. They can say whatever they want. And if you do that, right, like, let's say you're a popular influencer and you're on the Whatever podcast and you're the woman there, you know, that everybody's shitting on. Like, Merrick, let's say you're Merrick. You guys know Merrick DeVille?
Yep, I know Merrick.
By any chance? God, she's so smart. She is unbelievably attractive and also unbelievably smart. Like she just won the fucking lottery in that regard. Like just like stacked skill points in every statistic. So Merrick DeVille is like incredibly smart. I've gone to her for advice about debating before and all that good stuff. If she were on the Whatever podcast, I think she would like fucking like ruin it. You know what I mean? Like she would destroy it. She'd come with like,
oh yeah, they would never have her on that for that reason.
Right. Which is so funny because she is like, deck. because she is like the person who would do that, right? Who like she looks exactly like the type of person that they would bring on, and she is exactly the demographic they would bring on. But she would be so confident and so well spoken and just not fazed by anything that they have to say that people would like, no matter what they said afterward, it would sound like cope. And that's what happened with me and Matt Walsh. Like after I was done with the microphone, Matt Walsh coped about it. Like he sat there and he was like, "Whoa, he wasn't listening to me." It didn't matter. Like people still like, you can go look at the comment sections of the people who uploaded it and called me the bad guy. They're like, "Well, I don't know if Matt Walsh looked very good here." Like they can cope all they want after the fact, but ultimately all they're doing is attacking somebody who can't defend themselves anymore. And most people see through that.
I find it fascinating, like when I had the talk with Leaflet, to like see the reaction afterwards. And like while I was like speaking in facts, the response was essentially like, "Oh, hypothetically speaking, the point that you made and the fact that you're using doesn't apply. Then like explain yourself then." And there were like a lot of like clips coming off of like insane moments of things that like Leaflet said. And it's like so fascinating to me that like from their side, there was like this level of cope to be like, "Oh, Niara got owned, Niara got like clip farmed and whatnot." And there's like literally nothing. Like there's no take that is being used. There were like some instances.
I don't know why that keeps happening to you.
No, that's on my end. I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Okay. There's no take that they go into anything with a prescribed idea of who you are and what you're doing and how they're going to argue against it, which is like, again, there are so many people that I absolutely don't discount the idea that content can reach people. But for a vast preponderance of people who get that kind of hate, I would bet that like a lot of people don't think more than just sending, a harassment comment via Twitter or YouTube.
Yeah.
There's also
I think that like a lot of people think of me as like somebody is like emotionally and it's like starting to rage and whatnot and like yell and like, "Oh my god, you're misgendering me," and I'm going to like start screeching. There were like some instances when it was like, "Oh yeah, there's a spade," where it was about like conversion therapy. And I brought up about like, how there's essentially like children being like electrocuted and whatnot. And she was like, "Oh yeah, but like I'm not her son, and like her son's dog and whatnot." And like she tried to like bring it up like 2 or 3 times, trying to like bait me into like saying anything, because like it's just like
you just go, "Man, if you were Hassan's
whatever.
dog,
You
at
make
least
it
have a better diet."
Yeah. And I'm just like sitting there being like, "Yeah, does your community, yeah? Do you think your community would like Hassan more if he was shocking a gay person straight instead of, his dog?" But it's just like, it's fascinating, like when you see like the tactics afterwards and like the aftermath like afterwards. But I think there's a level of like, yeah, okay, there's going to be like some clip farming, and whoever posts it like first kind of can shape the narrative and like control it. So you kind of gotta be like ahead of the game. So they are being put on the defense.
I do think there's a frustration that I have with people who believe that they are like incredibly good debaters who have no idea what the fuck they're doing, or they don't actually debate, they just obfuscate. So like Dead Domain brought up the Whatever podcast. One of their frequent flyers is Andrew Wilson. And
yes. Just apropos of nothing, he was my first ever donation. $10.
Andrew Wilson was?
Yep.
Wild. So a thing that I noticed while watching his debate with Charlie recently, the one that went viral from the Whatever podcast, thing that I noticed from his debate is he doesn't actually address the points that a person says. He tries to say something to rile them up. Almost everything he seems to do is grab a thing to rile the person up and then fight with that, or ignore the point entirely that they were trying to make and argue a different point. So like, as an example, there's a moment where Charlie, it's the thing that made the debate go viral, where Charlie points out that Andrew Wilson on his shows and in his appearances tries to argue against promiscuity, tries to argue against, specifically against men dating any single mothers. That those are terrible ideas. People should not do them. And yet he has a wife who has been in 3 other marriages and has multiple children from those other marriages.
He crashed out.
It was
crazy.
But the fascinating thing, because it wasn't just his crash out, his wife called the show and helped with his crash out. But because it wasn't really a crash out, though. That's the thing. So the story that I see with that post going viral is people going, oh my God, he got so triggered. That's not the fascinating part. That's the most boring part of that whole thing. The fascinating part is what he did with that. What he did was he said, what is immoral about what I'm doing? And Charlie, to her credit, tried to point out there's nothing in my worldview that says that what you're doing is immoral. But through constantly interrupting her, through basically controlling the conversation, he pivoted away, and his wife did the same thing in the same show. He pivoted away from the argument of hypocrisy, which is what she was trying to argue.
Yeah.
If your worldview is so good, why don't you follow it? He pivoted away from that to what's wrong with what I'm doing? What's wrong with me and my wife being together? What's wrong with us being together this way? Which was never the point she was making.
He is making the point. That is
just real quick,
bad.
The domain, do you have to get going?
I do have to get going.
Should we cut it here?
I think wrapping up around here works as well, because I got to go to the gym and get food still.
Okay.
If you guys are not, well, do we want to wrap up just completely? Are we good?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm good.
Sure. Hey, this was really fun though. This was a great.
Yeah, no, this was
present.
awesome.
Thank you very much, guys.
We can do part 2.
I would not mind hopping on for a discussion again. I think
we need a name.
Yeah. I think
what do we name the podcast?
We can just call it whatever.
The whatever podcast. There you go.
You're part of my.
I think it's
you're part of my podcast now.
But
I've been Yarcast now, so I accidentally made a podcast.
Yarcast. Yara and friends.
Exactly.
I think I like the fact that a lot of us really fucking disagree with each other on a lot of brass tacks.
Yes, absolutely, and that's great.
We agree with what the we agree with where we want the world to go, but we disagree with some of the mechanics. And you know what? That's fucking great.
You know what's fascinating for me is like the ripple effects of like how we kind of like ended up together, because like I know Alec because Rev interacted with me. Because of Rev, I made a video that was taken out of context that Asmongold reacted to, quote unquote reacted to, that Suris made a video. And I, on Twitter one time was like, non-binary people are so hot, I need to follow more, and somebody tagged that
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh my God, they found dead domain, noted hot non-binary.
That's so funny, honestly.
That's kind of how I know about like each one of you, and that's awesome. It's fascinating.
So what you're saying is we all need to personally thank Asmongold for this great feast.
Bigotry brought us together.
Thank you, Roach King.
Yeah.
Your people provide us with much protein.
Indeed. They will create the enemy that destroys them, unironically.
Who was it? Was it Lenin who said the capitalist will sell you the rope you hang him with?
Huh.
There you go.
That sounds about right.
Every time. Anyway.
But yeah, thank you again. Me too.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for
well, I hope you all take care. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week and Happy New Year's and all that.
Oh yeah, Happy New Year.
Too.
My hunter hasn't died yet in WoW Hardcore. My year's going pretty good.
That's
I'll
good.
talk to you all next year.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, later, y'all.
See ya.
Thanks for hanging out.
You as well.
All right, bye-bye.
Now my entire layout is messed up, so let's wrap it up.
Perfect.
Sorry about that. Okay.
I love things being ruined.
Yeah. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitta, you know I'm not saying that last part, Valis of Sereth, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.